Let's call the meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. All right. Good evening. Sorry about the delay. We had some technical difficulties and our work session ran a little bit long. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
A motion by Member Henry.
Second.
And a second by Council Member Mock. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. This is the point where we would welcome any community comment for anything that's not on the agenda. If you all are here for the public hearings, you'll have your opportunity to speak during the public hearings. Anyone here for anything that's not on the agenda? Anything not on the agenda? Okay, sorry, I'll try to speak up. Okay, let's see. No presentations and reports. We will move into the public hearing. Mr. Lannis. Oh, right. Okay. All right. Perfect. Sorry about that. My apologies, Josh. It was Dan's name is on. Yep. Go ahead. All right. That.
I'll make a motion to open a public hearing.
We have a motion by Councilmember Henry. I'll second. Second by Councilmember Sayre. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. The public hearing is open.
All right, Madam Mayor, members, good evening. I have a presentation prepared here to kind of go over the 2019 improvement project in the assessment hearing, kind of covering from beginning to end, a little bit of a storyline of the project, and of course, towards the end, we'll go over the final assessment amounts and the project costs. We'll get into it. Assessment hearing formats, we'll talk about a little bit of a review of the project timeline, resident engagement, summary, project summary review, what we've been doing and how things currently look out there, completed improvements, review final assessment, final costs, and then getting into next steps and explaining what we have left to finish on the project. So there's a long list here of items that have been checked off from the beginning to today, starting back May of 2018, if I get that right, walkthroughs. We set up neighborhood meetings, authorized and completed appraisals, completed feasibility studies, notice to residents, went out mailings. 2 public open houses were back-to-back, and then prior to the public hearing, improvement hearing was held, approved the feasibility study, authorized final design and order improvements. All of these steps have been completed. Continued council workshop review. A 3rd open house was held. Plans and specs, open bids, and awarded the contract. An additional neighborhood meeting for the Drive area, and have substantially completed the construction for the project. For all the items that we've been through start to finish to today, we have to hold the assessment hearing, which we're holding tonight. That's the next step. And moving forward, as far as construction, complete the punch list and final turf restoration and landscaping will be completed in the spring. So just kind of an overview or rundown of what we've been doing as far as resident engagement. This first slide kind of shows the neighborhood meetings that were held prior to actually even the design of the project. We set up times and specific times and dates for each individual segment, met with folks out on the street, went through their concerns and their issues, jotted down notes, and actually walked the streets prior to, like I said, even having a design in place. And then along was an informational handout. It kind of went through the project overview again, and just to give them something on paper to read at that early stage of the project. Following that, we put together some resident guides. The assessments for the project were getting a little bit complicated, and because we had multiple areas with different assessments, we broke it up into 3 different. So each individual property in their respective segment got a resident guide outlining, at that point, estimates for assessments and project costs and next steps. And there's a timeline, and those also indicate when the public houses were going to be held. Additional meetings, so the meetings that were held were, like I said, 2 open houses in November. We tried to hit a wide range of times there. You can see we had an evening one and one during the day. In case folks were tied up in the evening, they could hit the one during the middle of the day. And then we did add that 3rd open house in January. The council kind of reviewed some of the improvements for different aspects of the project. And then the public hearing was December 3rd. And then the last slide on this engagement, we had a number of other things that we kind of moved forward with leading up to construction. We had different newsletters that went out, like I said, ramping up towards construction. December, January, and May newsletters went out outlining construction timeline, what to expect, and getting those phone numbers out there for people to call in case they had questions and needed some answers on things. Assessment summary letters, another letter went out to the Kirsch-Dietrich area because those were kind of, some of those assessment numbers were getting a little bit confusing. So we did send out another letter on that. And then just general website updates and notifications went out throughout the construction process. And those who signed up for the the emails got an email blast of those website updates as well. And then we did a whole bunch of construction notices. So anytime anything happened that was going to impact a property or a chunk of properties, we handed out actual paper notices on what to expect during construction. So now I'll just kind of run through basically the gist of the project from the beginning to the end. So we had failing pavements that we were trying to address with poor drainage and subsurface poor drainage as well. Pedestrian facilities, we kind of took a holistic approach as to looking at what sidewalks and what connections potentially needed to be made. And then from a utility standpoint, where are we at? What needs improvement? What has been failing and not existent? So looked at basically everything within the project areas. And of course, it was broke down into 4 major project locations. The Kirsch-Dietrich neighborhood, Elm Drive and the alley were lumped together. Sunny Ridge Drive and Lylewood got lumped together, and then the Spring Creek Trail connection. Narrowing it down, speaking just to the Kirsch-Dietrich neighborhood, we moved forward with a 32-foot wide street to allow parking on both sides. Converted it from rural to urban, so adding curb and gutter to define that street edge, be able to control drainage and also for longevity of the pavement. Sidewalk additions were added, so the side of Kirsch, and then the alternate was approved to add the sidewalk to the west side of Dietrich from Kirsch to 4th Street. So all of those things move forward. Sanitary sewer improvement. This neighborhood currently, prior to the project, did not have municipal sewer. Everyone out here had the septic system. So we added gravity sewer lines to basically down the center line of the streets that were improved. between two houses along a property line down to 6th Street and services out to the way as part of the project. Connect. And the final step will be in the of ongoing is the private portion of it. So private contractors are hired by the owners to connect from the right line to their building, house. And they need a plumbing permit to do that. Additional utilities, we added water main. This area did not have water main prior to the project. Everyone was on their own individual well. 8-inch water mains were added within the street. It's typical installation. Hydrants for fire protection were installed. Lines, small lines were added out to the right of way for each property, same as sanitary sewer. Again, private work needs to be done from the right of way to the buildings, plumbing, and those two, the sewer and the water, be complete prior to August of 20. This is kind of a cross section. We've all seen this already, but I think it's interesting. Kind of weave and nest of different and things that are under the ground that you don't know about. So, typical installation is the deepest sanitary sewer down usually the center line of the street. Off to one side will be the water main, which isn't quite so deep, but below the frost line, with laterals out to each property and laterals to the house. And on the other side of the sewer from the water, the storm sewer, it's just a number of pipes and catch basins placed at the curb line to collect that run off and divert it to the stormwater, through the stormwater conveyance system to whatever drainage ditches at the bottom of the hill. Now, just a series of some before and after pictures, which I like to show here to kind of get our frame of reference. So this is what it looked like, the project area before we started. So this is Dietrich, just south of Kershall. That's the Kershall-Dietrich intersection there. There's my post-construction photo. So you'll notice the big changes are the curb, pretty big change. You can kind of see some of the storm intakes there, and then sidewalk, 5-foot sidewalk that was added at the back of the curb. So this is taken just north of that intersection. Again, obviously the pavement was failing in this location. The drainage was very poor, as you can see by the water standing on the edge of the pavement there. Post-construction, curb and gutter, drainage is working much better. Driveways restored, sod installed. Similar situation. This is on pre and post. Another one where we had some drainage issues right in front of a driveway. There's the post construction, pretty good. And we'll move on to Elm Drive. So the summary synopsis for Elm Drive is we converted the roadway from from rural to urban again, adding the curb and gutter. Roadway width changed from 20 feet to 24, roughly that 3.5 to 4 foot width increase. Standard street section installed, 3.5 inches of blacktop, 8 inches of aggregate base, 12 inches of sand, curb and gutter. Water services were replaced on Elm Drive. The water main stayed in place. And then, of course, multiple geometry options were reviewed at that south end to kind of decide and give us that blend between impact and usability functionality. We came to the smaller cul-de-sac turnaround. That's what we ultimately landed on, along with the elimination of the connection between Elm Drive and Elm Drive West, where we added the 10-foot trail connection with ped ramps on both sides. So here's a pretty picture. So this is on the south end looking north where the cul-de-sac is today. Another one kind of looking north about halfway down the street. This is looking to the south at the cul-de-sac post. First, notice the curb and gutter. And here's looking north from the cul-de-sac. Quite a significant change there. Trail connection. A little sign for no trucks or no vehicle traffic. And about halfway down looking north. So that's how Elm Drive shook out. Moving on to the alley improvements. Started with aggregate surfacing on the alley, converted it to a paved section, and we used our standard street section, 3.5 inches of blacktop, 8 inches of aggregate base, 12 inches of sand. Went to a 12 feet in width for the alley improvements. Alley improvements consist of between Broadway and Oak, and then from Oak Street to the levee. This is a post-construction photo, a little bit shaded here, but you can kind of see how we blended in some of the aggregate driveways. Pavement surface is a little here, but it's representative for the post-construction condition. Sunny Ridge Drive and Lylewood Park. Here again, we went from a rural section to an urban, 29 feet, allowed parking on one side of the street. Lylewood stayed the same width, 32 feet. Was an existing urban section. Stayed the same. Added the curb and gutter. Quite a few storm sewer improvements along Sunny Ridge. There were a number of complaints of drainage within that section. We were able to remedy through storm sewer. Standard street section here again, 3.5 inches of black, 8 inches of base, 12 inches of sand. Sidewalks were considered and decided to not be included. Similarly, lighting considered and not added in. So pre-construction photo. So this is Lylewood looking to the west. Similar vantage point post-construction. Just moving a little further west, pre-construction, post-construction. A little further west, pre and post. There is a fair amount of landscaping currently done out there, but we're not totally finished. That's one thing we have to 100% in the spring is landscaping and turf rest. Spring Creek Drive Trail. There was a gap in the trail section from where they left off with Creek, or the Meadow and Creek development between there and Mount Hope Road. That taken care of. At an 8-foot wide bituminous trail and curb and gutter to manage the there. That's like today. So you can see the bituminous trail behind the curb and gutter defining, and then defining the streets and the trail is. We'll move on to the financing and funding section. So the project is supposed to be financed through, or will be financed through, the sale of a 429 general obligation bond. Minnesota statute chapter 429 general obligation bond for street, sanitary, water main, and sidewalk items. Then there's a number of city funding sources planned to be used to fund the project, including special assessments. Just kind of a review of where we were and where we went with the assessment methodology and how the assessments were calculated. We did calculate assessments as part of the feasibility study, so we looked at it from where we would from a perspective of the feasibility study, and And then we also did the independent appraisal, special benefit analysis, which was separate from the feasibility study. So those are two separate ways of looking at what the assessment should be and could be. We also reviewed previously paid assessments or fees within our project areas. And then keeping in mind that as practice, we have been giving a 50% street assessment credit for corner lots, which may receive an assessment at some point in the future. And then just a note there, assessment split of 80-20, statutory caveat that we have to assess at least 20%, a 20% minimum to move forward with the bond. It's just statute. The city uses the 429 bonding mechanism to assess a minimum of 20% improvement costs.
You know what, if you don't mind, we're gonna have Josh continue his presentation, and then we'll open it up for public comment, and you can ask those questions as soon as he's, okay.
So payment options. So there's a number of different items that I'll go through here. All those in your prepay without interest for 30 days from the hearing tonight. The assessments will be certified with the county auditor. They will go on the tax roll and through your normal taxes beginning in 2020. Be split first half, second half, just like you normally would pay your county taxes. It'll be added to that number. In any year after year, you can pay the assessment in full. If you pay it in full prior to November 15th, then you only owe that year's interest. If it's after November 15th, you'll owe the following year's interest as well. So that November 15th is kind of a good date to find. Just continuing on with the payment options. If your assessment's not paid in full, like you mentioned, it'll be added through a tax statement with the bond term of 20 years and an interest rate of 2% over the bond rate for a total of 4.5%. So 4.5% over 20 years. Partial payments would not be allowed, so that would be you have to pay it in full, or you have to pay what's on your tax statement each year. Deferment of payment or is also allowed, so you need to start paying your payments year one, your taxes. So assessment summary, at 66 properties located to the project areas, 65 proposed to be assessed. Now the street, sewer, and water assessment is $19,200, and that is for the Kirsch-Dietrich neighborhood. So those of you who are getting a street, sewer, and water improvement, it's $19,200, which was reduced by $800 from the original appraisal. Remember, I mentioned that independent appraisals were done, and that appraisal came at $25,000 for the street, sewer, and water, and it was lowered down to $10,000. Those of you on Sunny Ridge and Elm Drive just receiving a street benefit, your assessment is $8,000, and then those of you who are along the alley, at the alley improvement, your assessment is $1,200 total. Get into a little bit of the private utility to this project. As I mentioned, the sewer and water portion of the city project extended services out to the right-of-way line. Adjacent property owners were responsible to get those from the right-of-way line to their house. And there was some additional costs involved with that. So I'm just going to outline those here. The utility connection fees, there was a city fee of $834, council sewer fee of $2,485, city water fee of $1,047, city water meter charge of $339, and then we gave a charge credit of $800 for past charges paid. So the utility connection fees $8,145. Then the second component is the private utility installation cost. So each homeowner had to hire their own contractor to actually dig in the sewer and water lines. That's what that represents. The approximate range that cost is between 1,000 and 2,000, and that seems to be pretty similar to what the actual costs were when I saw some of those numbers. And each property is individually unique, so each one has a little bit different for that. Given the fact that there were additional costs for this neighborhood, the city did decide to allow basically a financing mechanism to be chosen. So the city allowed costs to be financed by the city and assessed back to the property owner if the property owner so chose. The assessment terms would be the same as what the project assessment will be, so that 20 years at 4.5%. With that, the property owners had to waive their right to appeal the assessment. And letters were sent out outlining those options that I just mentioned. Each property owner was given 3 options. Option 1 was to have the fees portion assessed. Option 2 was to have the portion and their utility connection costs assessed. And option 3 was to basically pay all costs out of pocket. So that letter went out to the entire neighborhood. We did receive most back. This is how it broke out. 10 owners to assess their connection fees, 11 owners elected to assess their connection fees and private utility installation costs, and 5 owners elected to pay their fees and their installation costs out of pocket. We'll run down the final numbers. So total final project cost came in at $2,648,026. Total assessed amount is $993,741. Total estimated save cost, which is just the balance there of $1,654,285. Bonding amounts, 429 bond, $1,698,753. Utility bond, $1,595,367. And then again, the final bonding rate came in at 2.5%, plus 2 is the assessment rate of 4.5% at a 20-year term. And to reiterate, the assessments are capped based on the appraisal and then also lowered based on previously paid costs. Next step, so tonight, obviously we're having an assessment hearing, and once we're through that, the final assessment roll will need to be adopted. As far as construction, the construction project is under winter suspension, and we will pick things up again in the spring to complete turf restoration, landscaping items, and the final bituminous wearing course needs to go on all of the streets. And that'll happen, that'll begin right away in the spring 2020. And that's...
All right. Those wishing to address the City Council should come forward and state their name and address for the record. City staff will collect all questions posed to the council and will respond after all have addressed the council. After all the comments are received, the public hearing will be closed. No further comments on the will be received at this meeting. So if anybody has questions, comments, if you want to come up and sit there and say your name and address, go ahead.
If this is just, we get a state credit or
What's your address, Mr. Anderson?
any of those things. Will this assessment that we put, the weekend, we state, or we get our real estate tax, will that be
Doing is Brent and Josh are writing questions and we're working on answers. So everybody's done asking their questions, they're going to answer those. So thank you. I think you just did it, but we'll follow up with you. Thank you. Thank you. Assessment. Anybody else? This is kind of the speed moment.
Mayor hit a couple of these. As it relates to Mr. Wilson's question on payoff, so you can pay off the assessment in 30 days with no interest, and then prior to the 15th of each year, you can, 50th of November each year, you can pay and avoid interest charges, but if you pay after, then you're correct for that year. I think Mr. Dewalter, you got your question answered related to your assessment wouldn't change by the city coming in and installing that drain. Relates to partial payment, Renee's question, and I might need some clarification from you, but there is no partial. you'll pay the amount based on a schedule, amateur, never say that word, amortization schedule over 20 years at 4.5%. So it's broken out over those 20 years, but and I'll defer to the city attorney. There isn't any partial payments that I'm aware of that provides additional options for that. The corner lot credit is we have a supplement to that credit for properties that the city normally wouldn't or the properties that would normally be assessed on an adjacent street project. In your case, you'd likely be assessed for a 4th Street improvement. So that's in the council packet, and so if they're willing to take action on that, that's how that would be resolved. And I would have to defer to the city attorney on Mr. Hammer's question related to real estate taxes.
I'll take Mr. Hammer's question. There are certain credits on real estate taxes, candidly based on age, disability, veteran status. Those apply to the real property taxes. They don't apply to the assessments. And I should point out that's statutory. That's not anything here. That's the legislature.
Is there any possibility of getting some for senior citizens or
The answer is no. The city has no policy or process for doing that.
Okay, last questions before we close the hearing? I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Henry,
I'll second.
second by Councilmember Bach. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Can I ask a question?
You may, go ahead.
On page 49 of the packet, Josh, the 2.648026 number, does that include the spring restoration and everything in it?
Yes, we did make some assumptions on what's left to pay for, and so that would include that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Brent, can you talk a little bit about the corner lot question?
Sure. No, the city doesn't have a formal assessment policy, though, so this is a prerogative of the council. So you're not required to provide a credit, but past practice has been a corner lot, which has 2 street frontages, would typically be assessed based on past practice at 50% of their street assessment if the other side wasn't improved. So if you also that's on the corner of Elm and 4th right now, Elm was improved, and there was an assessment for $8,000. But no improvement work was done on 4th Street. And so it's conceivable, if it hasn't happened already, that at some point 4th Street will be improved and there'd be a assessment of $8,000 again for 4th Street. And so because it wasn't, you have a question, Glenn?
Yes, wasn't 4th Street, wasn't 4th Street improved?
Yep, I'm just giving an example.
Okay.
That in this instance, Elm was improved, $1,000 assessment, 4th wasn't. And so at some point in the future, 4th Street will be improved, and there'll be theoretically another $8,000 assessment. So rather than giving that property owner $16,000 worth of assessments, City Council's past practice has been 50% on both projects since they're at a corner lot. Now, we do have what I'll call rear frontage, where their backyards are facing a street. Now, those typically haven't been given a credit. For example, there's properties on Dietrich and properties on Sunny Ridge that backyards are adjacent to 6th Street. But the city would not attempt to specially assess those properties because they don't have frontage. It's rear access, and counted, it's also a collector. But we do have a property on Sunny Ridge that had made on Sunny Ridge, but it was north of Sunny Ridge, and so that section of Lyle Parkway wasn't improved. So we're recommending a credit. And then there's also a property on Sunny Ridge and 6 on the far west end. They have, their house faces 6th Street. So we would attempt to specially assess that property for a 6th Street improvement where the balance of the homes moving east all have property, backyard onto 6th Street. We wouldn't attempt to assess those. So that's the long and short of it. I'm happy to answer follow-ups because I know that was somewhat complex.
I have a follow-up on that question. So everything that we're looking at, assessment roll has those the corner lot credits assumed in here.
Talk.
There are, in the council packet that went out on Friday, there is an roll that shows 5 lots that Brent is talking about that potentially the council could elect to give a corner credit to. The original assessment roll, which is the council, does not include those credits. So options are a little bit of Chinese restaurant. You can take the original assessment roll, you could take the new assessment roll, which has the 5 corner credits, or you could do something else. It's largely a decision. This is an issue that came up very late in the process, and Mr. Merrick is trying to operate on a principle of what I would call fundamental fairness, consistent with some past practices of this. But it's essentially a policy decision for the council.
Okay. For what it's worth, the corner credit seems to make sense, and it's been in favor of going forward, looking at in our packet. I also, Brent, could you explain 80/20 financing to address Ms. Hammer's question?
Sure. So there are several different ways a city can borrow money. One of them is called 429, which is basically a special assessment. And so what that says, if the city's going to borrow money, let's say the city's going to borrow $100, at least 20 of those dollars have to be assessed to benefiting properties of that project. The city attorney can correct me if I'm wrong, but in essence what that does is the state is forcing the city to assess 20% so that the city doesn't use that bonding type for other types of projects. So it's, if you're going to use it to do an improvement project, whether it's streets or some other piece, they want to make sure that there's a fundamental infrastructure piece to that. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
You good?
I just wanted to circle back on
Yeah.
the assessment comments. Thanks for explaining that a little bit better, Brent. And I agree definitely with Courtney that, especially following past practices, and this credit seems to make good sense to me. So I don't have any issues with going forward with the new. Are we calling it the new assessment roll? Is that our
Amended.
amended assessment roll? Okay. So thank you for answering all that.
With the amended assessment rolls, is that going to affect the bond rating or anything?
No.
Okay, thank you.
And we're still above that 20% threshold.
Yes.
Amended. Any other further questions? I'll entertain a motion.
So on the motion to adopt the resolution, how do you want us to address it through? Do you want us to just say amended?
Council, the resolution is referencing an existing assessment roll. I think you should make it clear in your motion that you're adopting the amended assessment roll that was in the council packet, but the practical reality is that will be the roll that will be attached to the resolution, so that will be the final action. Mr. Eckstein and I have talked about that in advance, so just make it clear that, so there's an oral record that you're adopting the revised one that was in Friday's packet. That will be attached to the resolution.
All right, I'm going to give a shot at this, and you tell me if I did it wrong. That's what you're here for, Larry Harris. So, I would like to make a motion to adopt Resolution 158-19 for the amended assessment roll as seen in the revised packet. No?
The revised assessment roll that was included in the packet sent out on Friday.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to adopt Resolution 158-19 for the I can't even do it, I'm sorry.
Revised assessment. roll.
For the revised assessment roll that was included in the packet,
Correct.
thank you, for the 2019 street improvement project.
I'll second that.
Oh, you got the easy part on that one.
So we have a motion by Councilmember Mock, a second by Councilmember Henry. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, moving on to item 6.2, the delinquent utility certifications to the county. Thank you all for coming.
Don't remember hitting it.
Let's see. So, no one needed to open the hearing, so we will open the public hearing for the delinquent.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. What we have on the agenda for this evening is the delinquent utility certification, and staff works continuously throughout the year to collect these unpaid charges, and I specifically call out Brenda Afta pays a lot of attention to this and spends a lot of time each month working through this whole process. But despite these efforts, we still ended up with a few certain charges that have not been paid. Therefore, on your October 21st meeting, you set a public hearing for the installation of the assessment, which happens to be tonight. And if you adopt this resolution with the certification roll, the proposed amounts are certified to the Carver County Auditor. Unlike the street assessments, this one is payable for 1 year, so they would pay this with their 20 taxes, and that would be a 5% and then a one-time charge of $5 administrative fee. So based on that, I would ask if there are any questions.
Any questions?
Yes. 433 Dietrich Drive. Is this name rings a bell? Is this common occurrence for this particular address?
Yes, they have been on the assessment roll in the past.
Did they pay it in previous years? That's through their tax.
Correct. They were assessed and then it would be paid on their taxes. That is correct.
All right.
I have a couple questions. The dollar amount to get up to 50, is it been like 2-3 months, several months? Oh, I'm not familiar
Yeah, this is basically for the past year.
for a full year.
Correct.
I noticed too that there's 3, and the neighbors that were part of the Diedrich Drive. Is there any correlation to, are they project, or are they not clear that this is separate than street improvement?
Well, this is for the stormwater charge all residents pay. It just so happens these people have chosen not to pay. They are also in the project to be connected to city water and sewer in the future. So we have a different process that they would be involved with, which is what we use when residents actually have water and when they don't pay to a point of we can turn their water off. Right now, with just the stormwater fee, those 3 residences are the ones in the past that only had stormwater, and so we have that option. Going forward into next year, that will be a different situation with these 3 properties.
Other questions? Great. Those wishing to address the city council come forward and state your name and address for the record. After all comments are received, the hearing will be closed. No further comments will be received on this issue at this meeting. Are there any public comments? And it looks like there are any members of the public here. With that, I think we can close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion by Councilmember Sayre,
I'll second.
by Councilmember Henry. Any further discussion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I will make the motion to adopt Resolution 157-19, adopting and certifying lien on utilities and municipal fees.
Second to the motion?
Motion by myself, Mayor Johnson, and a second by Councilmember Sayer. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Right.
Mayor Johnson, I would like to, as we move ahead to the consent agenda, there are 2 items that I would like to pull off the consent.
Okay.
You ready?
Yep.
I would so do you want me to make a motion removing those 2? Or just request those 2? Come on.
You can just pull those.
Okay. I would like to pull items 7.2, the approved minutes of November 4th, regular meeting, and 7.9, approved resolution accepting the donation from the Lions Club.
That was a motion.
No, he just wanted to pull it. And then do you want me to go right into talking about it? Or do you want to
No,
read
so
it?
what our process is they're pulled, and then you may or another council member may make a motion to adopt the consent agenda excluding 7.2 and 7.9. Once that's acted on, then we take 7.2 and 7.9 as separate items.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda, taking out 7.2 and 7.9 for further discussion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Mock and a second by Councilmember Henry. The discussion.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Right.
Okay, on 7.2 for the minutes, it's very minor, but it does say, under Councilmember Henry, you want to urge everyone, or it's under communications, I'm sorry. The school referendum, not the school reference, is on the mail. So there's just, it says the school reference is on the mail. It should say school referendum. And then for 7.9, I just thought that we should give some acknowledgement to the Carver Lions Club for donating a decent sum of money towards our new holiday lighting for the downtown area. The Carver Lions donated $5,000 for some of the holiday lighting on the streetlights downtown. And I just wanted to give a special thank you to that volunteer group.
And I'll reiterate it.
I knew, and thanks for calling it out, I knew it was holiday decorations, but I didn't know it would be lights.
Yeah, but
So-
it's the reason it's on
Will this tie into like
They are, yeah.
a tree lighting or a, I haven't looked at the calendar, I'm sure there's an event coming up.
There is. Tree lighting is actually this weekend. Or I'm sorry, not this weekend.
this weekend.
November 30th.
Okay.
I know Mayor Johnson is actually flipping the switch, but I don't know that the street lights, the street decorations come on at the same time.
I don't know.
Appreciate the Lions supporting and keeping the downtown festive.
And what that is going to do is going to let us extend the street holiday decorations up. So that will be very cool to send that out. Right. That.
Excuse me, Mayor, Council.
Yeah.
So, if you would like, you should consider adopting then the minutes from whatever that meeting was as amended by Councilmember Mock, and then a separate motion related to accepting the donations. It's a resolution. So each of those should be separate actions.
Got it.
I'll make a motion to adopt 7.2 off the consent agenda as amended.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Henry and a second by Councilmember Mock. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And I'll make a motion to approve resolution 15619, accepting the $5,000 donation from the Carver Lions on the consent agenda.
I'll second.
We again have a motion by Councilmember Henry and a second by Councilmember Mock. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Great. Let's see, no unfinished business, no new business. Council member communications. Carrie. I have a bunch of updates. Last Thursday, Brent and I went to the joint meeting of the Minnesota Cities in the league. There were a bunch of really good different speakers. There was a panel discussion on how cities to meet the needs of an evolving force. The deed commissioner spoke, the Minnesota Housing Commissioner, Jennifer Ho, and again, Carver, a special shout out for our work in the area of workforce housing. We had a Southwest Transit meeting last week where we worked on the strategic vision for that group. Wednesday is the Chamber's annual lunch. Other things, hoping everybody will join me in keeping Brian Skokes' family in their thoughts as they lost his dad recently and quite unexpected. And then wishing the Chaska Hawks football team in this state tournament on November 30th. So, great.
We had an HPC meeting on Tuesday. We had lots of windows to talk about, so that's really what the whole night was. We had a home on Thursday, replaced some storm windows approved, and then we had some replacement windows for St. Nicholas Church tabled, furthering up there to see. That will be coming back now in December. That's all I have.
Planning Commission meeting will be Thursday night, so I don't have any updates as of. That's all I got.
I just have one thing. I wanted to thank Dan and Aaron, and it's a shame Josh isn't here. Josh and Michael Jabs and Pat for their work on the 2019 project. City engineers have a very tough job because they're expected to be right all the time. Numbers. But the 2019 project is easily the most complex and challenging project I've ever worked on, an improvement project, and I don't think we could have done it without Bolton and Mink. It was great to have them, from their communication to how they handled resident concerns. This doesn't mean you can screw up the next one, but very good. But it was reassuring to have them on the team, knowing that they were going to handle, because we impacted residents this last project with how disruptive construction was, asking them to do for water and sewer. So it's great to have them on.
Thank you. We echo Brent's thank yous and appreciation for. All right. Nothing else? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
A motion by Councilmember Mock and a second by Mayor Johnson. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Good evening.